The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine courtyard of Westbrook Preparatory Academy, where manicured lawns met marble pathways and every building seemed to whisper promises of privilege. 17-year-old Maya Chen adjusted her backpack straps and took a deep breath, her dark eyes scanning the imposing Gothic architecture that would be her new academic home. The scholarship letter in her pocket felt heavier than it should have, a constant reminder that she didn't belong here, at least not according to the stares she was already receiving. Maya's sneakers squeaked against the polished floors as she navigated the hallways, following the orientation map clutched in her hand. Students moved around her like water around a stone, their designer clothes and practiced conversations creating an invisible barrier she couldn't quite penetrate. She'd grown up in Oakland, where respect was earned through authenticity and grit, not inherited through family names and trust funds. "Excuse me, are you lost?" The voice belonged to a tall boy with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His uniform was immaculate, his posture radiating the kind of confidence that came from never having to question your place in the world. Maya looked up from her map. "Just finding my first class. Chemistry with Dr. Peterson. I'm Brandon Whitmore." He extended his hand, and Maya noticed the expensive watch on his wrist, the way his friends had formed a semicircle behind him. "My father's on the board of trustees. I make it my business to know all the new students." Maya Chen. She shook his hand briefly, noting the firmness of his grip, the way his eyes lingered on her face as if memorizing every detail. "Chen," Brandon repeated, tilting his head. "Interesting. You don't look Chinese." Heat flashed through Maya's chest, but she kept her expression neutral. "I'm not. It's my mother's married name." "Ah!" Brandon's smile widened, and Maya caught the exchange of glances between him and his friends. "Well, Maya Chen, welcome to Westbrook. I'm sure you'll find it educational. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss." The morning proceeded with the usual first-day rituals, introductions, syllabus reviews, and the careful social mapping that occurred whenever teenagers gathered in new configurations. Maya found herself cataloging faces and voices, noting the subtle hierarchies that governed interaction at Westbrook. The students here spoke in code, their conversations layered with references to summer homes in the Hamptons, charity galas, and family connections that opened doors before they even needed to be knocked upon. In chemistry class, Maya partnered with a quiet girl named Sarah who seemed genuinely kind but kept glancing nervously at Brandon's table whenever she spoke. Their first experiment involved measuring reaction rates, and Maya's steady hands and precise measurements earned an approving nod from Dr. Peterson. "You've done this before," the teacher observed, making a note in her gradebook. "My father's a chemical engineer," Maya explained. "He taught me to love precision." As they cleaned up their workspace, Sarah leaned closer. "You seem really smart. Brandon's been watching you all morning." "Is that supposed to mean something?" Sarah's expression grew troubled. "Brandon and his friends, they have a way of making life difficult for people who don't fit their idea of what Westbrook should be." Maya was about to respond when Brandon appeared beside their table, his presence commanding immediate attention from nearby students. He picked up Maya's lab notebook, flipping through the pages with casual entitlement. "Impressive work," he said, though his tone suggested the opposite. "Very thorough, almost like you're trying to prove something." "I'm just doing the assignment," Maya replied, reaching for her notebook. Brandon held it just out of reach, his smile never wavering. "Of course you are. That's what scholarship students do, right? Work extra hard to show they belong?" The word scholarship hung in the air like a challenge. Maya felt every eye in the classroom turn toward her, felt the weight of their assumptions and judgments. She stood slowly, her mother's voice echoing in her mind. "Grace under pressure, baby girl. That's how we show them who we really are. May I have my notebook back?" Maya's voice was calm, controlled. Brandon studied her for a long moment, then placed the notebook on the table with exaggerated care. "Welcome to Westbrook, Maya. I have a feeling we're going to be great friends." As he walked away, Maya caught Sarah's worried expression and realized that her first day was far from over. Lunch at Westbrook was an exercise in social geography. The cafeteria stretched across a sun-drenched atrium, its multiple levels and sectioned seating areas creating natural territories for different social groups. Maya carried her tray to an empty table near the windows, hoping to observe the ecosystem before attempting to navigate it. She'd barely taken her first bite when Brandon appeared again, this time flanked by 3 other boys who radiated the same entitled energy. They sat down uninvited, their presence immediately claiming the space. "So Maya," Brandon began, cutting into his sandwich with precise movements, "tell us about yourself. What brings a girl from Oakland to our little corner of privilege?" Maya chewed slowly, buying time. "Good academics, small class sizes, the usual reasons." "The usual reasons," repeated a boy with dark hair and sharp features. Maya recognized him from her morning English class, Tyler Morrison, whose family name adorned one of the library wings. How wonderfully usual. The third boy, stockier than the others with premature stubble and calculating eyes, leaned forward. "I'm curious about the martial arts background on your application. What style do you study?" Maya's hand stilled on her fork. "How do you know about my application?" "My father reviews all the scholarship applications," Brandon explained casually. "Quality control, you understand. We like to know who we're bringing into the Westbrook family." "Judo," Maya said quietly. "I study judo." "Judo," Tyler mused. "How exotic. Do you compete?" "Some." "Win much?" the third boy pressed. Maya met his gaze steadily. "Enough." Brandon clapped his hands together, the sound sharp in the suddenly quiet space around their table. "Well, that's fascinating, really. A judo champion in our midst. I'm sure that'll be useful for something." The mockery in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. Maya felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came before competition, the same focus that had served her well on countless mats. But this wasn't a dojo, and these weren't opponents bound by rules and honor. "If you'll excuse me," Maya said, standing with her tray. "I need to get to my next class." "Of course," Brandon said, his smile never faltering. "See you around, Maya-chan. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of each other." As Maya walked away, she heard Tyler's voice carry across the cafeteria. "Think she'll last the semester?" The afternoon brought more subtle challenges. In AP History, Maya found herself partnered with Brandon for a project on civil rights movements. His suggestions were pointed and loaded with subtext, his questions designed to make her defend positions she hadn't taken and explain perspectives she didn't necessarily share. "I think it's interesting," Brandon said during their planning session, "how some people see discrimination everywhere, even when it's not really there. Don't you think that kind of sensitivity might actually make integration more difficult?" Maya kept her pencil moving across her notebook, sketching out a timeline of events while her mind processed the layers of his statement. "I think people who haven't experienced discrimination might not recognize it when they see it." "But how do you know the difference between actual discrimination and, say, normal social adjustment? Sometimes people just don't fit in because they're different, not because anyone's being unfair." The other students in their group had grown quiet, sensing the tension building beneath the surface of their academic discussion. Maya looked up from her notes, meeting Brandon's eyes directly. "I think," she said carefully, "that people who fit in easily might not understand what it feels like to be made to feel like you don't belong." "Made to feel," Brandon repeated, emphasizing each word. "So it's about feelings, not facts. It's about both." Their teacher, Mr. Hendricks, approached their table with a warm smile. "How's the project coming along?" "Great," Brandon said immediately. "Maya's bringing a really unique perspective to the civil rights movement. Very personal." Mr. Hendricks nodded approvingly. "Excellent. Personal connection to historical events is exactly what makes for compelling analysis." As the teacher moved on, Brandon's smile returned, sharper this time. "This is going to be a very interesting presentation." After school, Maya found herself in the parking lot, waiting for her mother to pick her up. The other students streamed past her toward luxury cars and waiting drivers, their conversations filled with plans for private tutoring sessions and weekend trips to family properties. She was checking her phone when she heard her name called. Sarah approached hesitantly, glancing around as if making sure she wasn't being watched. "How was your first day?" Sarah asked. "Educational," Maya replied, echoing Brandon's earlier words. Sarah's expression grew more troubled. "Maya, I need to tell you something. Brandon and his friends, they have a history. Last year there was another scholarship student, a boy named Marcus. He was brilliant, really talented, but they made his life miserable. Constant jokes about his background, subtle sabotage of his work, social isolation. He transferred out after Christmas." Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the afternoon breeze. What exactly did they do? It was never anything you could point to and say, that's bullying, Sarah explained. It was more like death by 1,000 cuts. Little things that added up. Questions about whether he really deserved to be here. Jokes about diversity quotas, exclusion from study groups and social events. They made him feel like he was constantly having to prove himself. And the school did nothing? Sarah's laugh was bitter. The school loves its diversity statistics. Having scholarship students looks good in the brochures, but when those students struggle socially, well, that's just part of the adjustment process, isn't it? Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Running late, baby. Traffic is terrible. 10 more minutes. Why are you telling me this? Maya asked. Because you seem strong. Stronger than Marcus was. And because... Sarah hesitated, then continued. Because what they did to him was wrong. Someone needs to stand up to them. As Sarah walked away, Maya stood alone in the parking lot, watching the stream of expensive cars carry Westbrook students back to their privileged lives. She thought about her mother, working double shifts as a nurse to help pay for the expenses that Maya's scholarship didn't cover. She thought about her father, who had emigrated from Jamaica with nothing but determination and a belief that education could change everything. Most of all, she thought about Sensei Williams, her judo instructor back in Oakland, who had taught her that true strength wasn't about dominating others. It was about protecting what mattered and standing up for what was right. When her mother's car finally pulled up, Maya slid into the passenger seat with a forced smile. How was your first day, sweetheart? Fine, Maya said, watching Westbrook's towers recede in the side mirror. Just getting to know my classmates. But as they drove through the gates and back toward the city, Maya made a quiet promise to herself. She wouldn't be another Marcus. Whatever Brandon and his friends had planned, she would be ready. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm of subtle warfare. Brandon and his circle, Tyler, the sharp-featured boy whose family owned half the commercial real estate in the county, and Connor, the stocky one whose father was a federal judge, waged their campaign with the precision of experienced predators. It started small. Maya's locker combination mysteriously stopped working, forcing her to wait in line at the main office while secretaries investigated the computer error. Her name was consistently mispronounced during attendance, despite her polite corrections. Partners for group projects were assigned through a system that somehow always left her working with the least engaged students. If you're enjoying this story of courage and standing up to bullies, smash that like button and let me know in the comments what you would do in this situation. In English class, when Maya offered an analysis of the racial dynamics in To Kill a Mockingbird, Tyler responded with a patronizing smile and a comment about how contemporary perspectives sometimes missed the universal themes of classic literature. When she earned the highest grade on a chemistry test, Connor loudly wondered if the diversity curve was affecting class standards. Each incident was small enough to dismiss, subtle enough to make Maya question whether she was being oversensitive, but collectively, they created an atmosphere of constant scrutiny and judgment that made every day feel like a performance. The worst part was the isolation. Other students, even those who might have been sympathetic, kept their distance. Maya understood the logic. Why risk becoming a target when you could simply avoid the conflict? But understanding didn't make the lunch hours at empty tables any easier, or the silence when she entered a room any less deafening. 3 weeks into the semester, the campaign escalated. Maya arrived at school to find her locker decorated with a printout of her scholarship application, highlighted sections emphasizing her family's financial need and her status as a diversity candidate. The document was posted at eye level, impossible to miss, with a sticky note attached. Just so everyone knows what we're working with. Heat flooded Maya's face as she tore down the papers, aware of the students gathering to watch. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious, a few openly amused. Brandon was nowhere to be seen, but Maya caught Tyler's satisfied smile from across the hallway. Is there a problem here? Vice Principal Anderson approached, his expression neutral but his eyes taking in the scene with practiced assessment. Someone posted my private information on my locker, Maya said, holding up the crumpled papers. Mr. Anderson examined the documents briefly. I see. Do you have any idea who might have done this? Maya hesitated. Accusing Brandon without proof would accomplish nothing except painting her as paranoid. No, sir. Well, we'll certainly look into it. In the meantime, Perhaps you should be more careful about leaving sensitive documents where they might be accessed. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Maya stared at the vice principal, processing his words. You're saying this is my fault? I'm saying that in a school environment, it's important to be mindful of privacy. We'll investigate, of course, but these things often resolve themselves when students exercise better judgment. As Mr. Anderson walked away, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. The careful control she'd maintained for weeks began to crack, revealing the anger beneath. She thought about her parents, working multiple jobs to give her opportunities they'd never had. She thought about the hours spent studying, training, preparing for a chance to prove herself. She thought about Marcus, who had given up and walked away. She wouldn't be driven out. Not by Brandon, not by his friends, not by an institution that protected its privileged students while abandoning those who threatened their comfortable hierarchy. But she needed to be smart about it. In judo, you studied your opponent before you made your move. You waited for the right moment, the perfect opening. You used their strength against them. Maya spent her lunch period in the library, researching Westbrook's policies on harassment and discrimination. She documented every incident, every joke, every subtle slight. She began carrying a small notebook, recording dates, times, witnesses. If this was going to be a war, she would fight it with the tools they'd given her. The library had become her sanctuary, a place where she could disappear among the stacks and plan her next moves. Maya was deep in research when she heard footsteps approaching her table. She looked up to find a woman in her 60s, silver-haired and elegant, wearing a simple cardigan and carrying a stack of books. "You're Maya Chen," the woman said, settling into the chair across from her. "I'm Dr. Elizabeth Reeves. I teach senior seminar and oversee the peer mediation program." Maya recognized the name. Dr. Reeves was something of a legend at Westbrook, a teacher who'd been there for decades and commanded respect from students and faculty alike. "Nice to meet you. I've been watching you these past few weeks," Dr. Reeves said, her voice quiet but clear. "I've seen how you carry yourself, how you respond to challenges. I wanted to introduce myself." "Challenges," Maya repeated. "Is that what we're calling it?" Dr. Reeves smiled, and Maya caught a glimpse of steel beneath the gentle exterior. "I've been at Westbrook for 32 years. I've seen many students come and go, faced many different kinds of challenges. Some rise to meet them. Others are broken by them. The difference usually isn't talent or intelligence. It's preparation and support. What kind of support? The kind that helps you understand that this isn't really about you, Maya. It's about fear. Fear of change. Fear of having to share space and opportunity. Fear of being judged by the same standards they judge others. When people act from fear, they become predictable, and predictable opponents can be defeated. Maya leaned forward, intrigued despite herself. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." "I was the first black teacher hired at Westbrook," Dr. Reeves said simply. "That was 1992. I faced my own Brandon Whitmores, my own Tyler Morrisons. The names change, but the playbook remains remarkably consistent. How did you survive it?" "By remembering that surviving wasn't enough. I didn't come here to simply endure. I came to excel, to change things, to make it easier for the students who would come after me. And by learning to fight smart instead of fighting angry." Dr. Reeves reached into her bag and pulled out a book, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Not exactly standard curriculum, but relevant nonetheless. The master strategist wins without fighting, not because he's weak, but because he's prepared. Maya took the book, feeling its weight in her hands. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that you have more power than you realize. You're smart, disciplined, and principled. You have skills they don't expect and patience they lack. Most importantly, you have something they fear, the ability to succeed despite their interference. But they have all the advantages: family connections, money, institutional support. They have privilege," Dr. Reeves corrected. "But privilege without character is brittle. It cracks under pressure. And you, Maya Chen, are going to be a great deal of pressure." As Maya walked to her next class, Sun Tzu's words echoed in her mind. Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. She thought about judo, about using an opponent's momentum against them, about the patience required to wait for the perfect moment to strike. The war was far from over, but now she had a strategy. The escalation came, as these things often did, during the most public moment possible. It was the annual Westbrook Academic Showcase, where students presented their semester projects to panels of teachers, parents, and community members. Maya and Brandon's civil rights presentation was scheduled for the main auditorium, with an audience that included several members of the school board. Maya had spent weeks preparing, researching not just the historical facts but the contemporary relevance of their chosen topic. She'd crafted a presentation that was both academically rigorous and personally meaningful, weaving together statistical analysis with human stories of courage and change. Brandon, meanwhile, had taken a different approach. His research focused on the unintended consequences of civil rights legislation, the economic disruption caused by integration, and the cultural challenges of diversity initiatives. His sources were legitimate but carefully selected, his arguments technically sound but emotionally tone-deaf. As they took the stage, Maya felt the familiar pre-competition calm settling over her. The audience was larger than she'd expected, filled with faces she recognized from school events and community functions. In the third row, she spotted Dr. Reeves, who offered an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. "Good afternoon," Maya began, her voice steady despite the racing of her heart. "Our presentation today examines the civil rights movement not as a historical artifact, but as an ongoing struggle for justice and equality that continues to shape our society." She moved through her opening points with practiced ease, establishing the historical context while drawing connections to contemporary issues. The audience was engaged, leaning forward, taking notes. Maya felt herself hitting her stride, finding the rhythm that came from thorough preparation and genuine passion. Then Brandon took the microphone. "Thank you, Maya, for that passionate introduction," he said, his tone suggesting that passion was somehow inappropriate in an academic setting. "I'd like to offer a more balanced perspective on these complex issues." What followed was a masterclass in polite sabotage. Brandon systematically undermined Maya's arguments without directly contradicting her facts. He questioned her sources' objectivity, suggested that her personal investment in the topic might be clouding her judgment, and repeatedly used phrases like "Maya believes" and "Maya feels" to frame her contributions as emotional rather than analytical. "Of course," Brandon continued, "it's natural for someone who has benefited from affirmative action programs to feel strongly about defending them. But as academics, we must be willing to examine all perspectives, including those that might challenge our personal experiences." Maya felt the words hit her like a physical blow. The audience shifted uncomfortably, some looking sympathetic, others nodding in agreement with Brandon's reasonable tone. She caught sight of her parents in the back row, her mother's hands clenched in her lap, her father's jaw tight with barely contained anger. "I think," Maya said, her voice carefully controlled, "that personal experience can inform academic analysis without compromising its validity. The civil rights movement was built on the testimonies of people who lived discrimination, not just those who studied it from a distance." "True," Brandon conceded with a patronizing smile. "But we must be careful not to mistake individual grievances for systemic analysis. Just because someone feels discriminated against doesn't mean discrimination has actually occurred." The dismissal in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. Maya felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. This was exactly what he wanted, to provoke her into an emotional response that would confirm every stereotype about the angry black girl who couldn't handle academic discourse. Instead, she took a breath and smiled. "You're absolutely right, Brandon. Feelings alone aren't sufficient for academic analysis. That's why I've brought data." Maya clicked to her next slide, revealing a comprehensive statistical analysis of discipline rates, graduation rates, and college acceptance rates at Westbrook, broken down by race and socioeconomic status. The numbers told a clear story of systemic disparities that couldn't be explained by individual merit alone. "These statistics," Maya continued, "show patterns that persist across years and demographics. They suggest that institutional factors, not individual failings, drive these outcomes." Brandon's smile faltered slightly. "Statistics can be manipulated to support any argument. Context matters." "You're right again," Maya said, advancing to her final slide. "Context does matter, so let me provide some." The screen filled with quotes from Westbrook's own promotional materials, student handbook, and board meeting minutes, all emphasizing the school's commitment to diversity and inclusion. Maya had spent hours combing through these documents, looking for the gap between rhetoric and reality. "According to these official statements," Maya said, "Westbrook is committed to creating an environment where all students can thrive. Yet the data suggests that students from certain backgrounds consistently struggle to achieve outcomes comparable to their peers, despite similar academic qualifications. She paused, making eye contact with several board members in the audience. The question isn't whether individual students are working hard enough. The question is whether our institutions are living up to their stated values. The auditorium was silent. Maya could feel the weight of the audience's attention, the sudden shift in energy. Brandon stood beside her, his prepared closing remarks suddenly inadequate. "Thank you," Maya concluded, "for your attention." The applause was polite but notably warmer than it had been at the beginning. Maya caught Dr. Reeves's eye and saw something that might have been pride in the older woman's expression. Her parents were beaming, her father giving her a subtle thumbs up. As the audience dispersed, Maya began packing up her materials. She was aware of Brandon standing beside her, his usual easy confidence replaced by something harder. "Impressive presentation," he said quietly. "Very revealing. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it," Brandon continued, his voice dropping so only she could hear. "Because it's going to be the last time you get to play the victim card quite so publicly." Maya looked up from her laptop case. "Excuse me?" Brandon's smile was sharp as a blade. "You want to talk about institutional accountability? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how scholarship students sometimes struggle with the academic rigor at Westbrook. Let's talk about how affirmative action might set people up for failure by placing them in environments they're not prepared for." "I earned my place here," Maya said, her voice steady despite the anger building in her chest. "Did you? Or did you earn a place that was set aside for someone who looked like you and had the right kind of story?" Brandon leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because there's a difference, Maya, and everyone here knows it." Maya felt the words like physical blows, each one carefully chosen to inflict maximum damage. She thought about her parents, about the hours spent studying, about the sacrifice and determination that had brought her to this moment. "I belong here," she said quietly. "We'll see," Brandon replied. "We'll see how well you belong when things get really difficult." As he walked away, Maya stood alone at the front of the auditorium, her presentation materials scattered around her. The taste of victory from her successful presentation was already fading, replaced by the metallic tang of impending conflict. She thought about Dr. Reeves's words about fighting smart instead of fighting angry. She thought about Sun Tzu's teachings about patience and strategy. But most of all, she thought about her sensei's voice. "Sometimes, Maya, the only way to stop a bully is to show them that you're not afraid of the fight." The war was escalating, and Maya knew that the real battle was just beginning. The weeks following the academic showcase brought a new level of intensity to Brandon's campaign. Where before the harassment had been subtle and deniable, now it carried the sharp edge of personal vendetta. Maya found herself navigating a minefield of calculated cruelty, each trap more sophisticated than the last. It started with her grades. Papers that had previously earned A's now came back with B's and C's, marked with comments about unclear argumentation and insufficient analysis. When Maya approached her teachers for clarification, they offered vague suggestions about raising the bar and pushing students to excel. The message was clear. Her academic performance was being held to a different standard, one that shifted just out of reach whenever she tried to meet it. Maya documented everything just as Dr. Reeves had suggested. She kept copies of her assignments, recorded her teachers' comments, and noted the disparity between her grades and those of her classmates. The pattern was undeniable, but also unprovable. A masterclass in institutional gaslighting. The social isolation intensified as well. Students who had been friendly before the showcase now avoided her in the hallways, their discomfort palpable. Maya understood the calculation. Associating with her had become a liability, a risk that most weren't willing to take. She ate lunch alone, studied alone, and walked through Westbrook's hallways like a ghost haunting her own life. But Brandon wasn't content with passive exclusion. He orchestrated a series of incidents designed to humiliate Maya in increasingly public ways. During a school assembly, he accidentally spilled coffee on her during a standing ovation, leaving her with a stained shirt and nowhere to hide. In the cafeteria, he and his friends would sit just close enough to her table to make their conversations audible, discussing topics like merit-based admissions and diversity quotas with pointed glances in her direction. The cruelest blow came during midterm week. Maya arrived at school to find photocopies of her scholarship application posted throughout the building. not just on her locker this time, but on bulletin boards, taped to walls, and slipped inside random textbooks. The documents had been edited, with fabricated sections emphasizing her family's financial struggles and exaggerating her need for special consideration. By the time Maya managed to collect most of the copies, the damage was done. The entire school had seen her private information. Her family's financial situation laid bare for entertainment. She found herself in the bathroom, sitting on the floor of a locked stall, trying to breathe through the humiliation and rage. "Maya?" The voice belonged to Sarah, who had been one of the few students to maintain any contact with her. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Maya lied, her voice thick with unshed tears. "No, you're not, and that's okay. What they did, it's not okay." Maya opened the stall door and looked at Sarah's concerned face. "Why do you still talk to me? Everyone else has figured out that I'm radioactive." "Because what they're doing is wrong," Sarah said simply. "And because you're the strongest person I know. You haven't given up, haven't transferred, haven't let them break you. That takes incredible courage." "I don't feel courageous. I feel exhausted. That's what courage looks like sometimes. Getting up every day even when everything inside you wants to stay in bed. Fighting even when the deck is stacked against you." Maya looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, seeing the toll that weeks of constant pressure had taken. Her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion, her shoulders tight with perpetual tension. She thought about Marcus, the scholarship student who had transferred out the year before. She understood now why he had left, why the fight had seemed impossible. But she also thought about her parents, about the sacrifices they had made to give her this opportunity. She thought about Dr. Reeves, who had faced similar challenges and survived to become a pillar of strength for students like Maya. She thought about all the students who might come after her, who would face the same choices she was facing now. "I need to fight back," Maya said, her voice growing stronger. "I need to find a way to expose what they're doing." "How?" "Everyone knows what's happening, but no one wants to get involved. The administration protects students like Brandon because their families donate money and wield influence." The teachers look the other way because confronting this kind of behavior is messy and complicated. Maya turned from the mirror, a new resolve crystallizing in her chest. "Then I need to make it impossible for them to look the other way." That afternoon, Maya found Dr. Reeves in her classroom, grading papers with the same methodical precision she brought to everything else. The older woman looked up as Maya entered, her expression immediately shifting to one of concern. "You look like you've been through a war," Dr. Reeves observed. "I have been," Maya replied, settling into a chair across from the teacher's desk. "And I'm losing. Are you? Or are you learning what it takes to win?" Maya pulled out her notebook, filled with weeks of documented incidents, grades, and observations. "I've been following your advice, documenting everything, fighting smart instead of fighting angry, but it's not working. They're escalating faster than I can respond, and the administration doesn't care as long as everything stays within the bounds of plausible deniability." Dr. Reeves set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. "Tell me about your judo training." The question seemed to come from nowhere, but Maya had learned to trust Dr. Reeves's instincts. "I've been training since I was 8. My sensei always said that judo isn't just about physical technique. It's about mental discipline, about reading your opponent, about finding the right moment to act. And what do you do when you're facing a stronger opponent? You use their strength against them. You wait for them to overextend, then redirect their energy." Dr. Reeves smiled. "Brandon and his friends are overextending. They're getting sloppy, taking bigger risks, leaving themselves vulnerable. The question is whether you're prepared to take advantage of that vulnerability." "What do you mean?" "I mean that they're about to give you exactly what you need to expose them. But you have to be ready to act when the moment comes. And you have to be prepared for the consequences of winning." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "What consequences?" "Change is never comfortable for those who benefit from the status quo. When you challenge a system, the system fights back. Are you prepared for that fight?" Maya thought about the isolation, the humiliation, the constant pressure of the past few weeks. Then she thought about the students who would come after her, who would face the same choices she was facing now. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready." Dr. Reeves opened her desk drawer and pulled out a small device that Maya recognized as a digital recorder. "Good, because I have a proposition for you." The proposition was both simple and dangerous. Dr. Reeves had been quietly documenting the harassment Maya was facing, building a case that could be presented to the school board. But documentation wasn't enough. They needed evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. Brandon's biggest weakness is his arrogance, Dr. Reeves explained. He believes he's untouchable, that his family's influence protects him from consequences. That arrogance is going to lead him to make a mistake. What kind of mistake? The kind that happens when someone thinks they're safe from accountability. He's going to push too far, say too much, do something that crosses a line even his family's money can't uncross. Maya understood the implication. You want me to provoke him. I want you to give him enough rope to hang himself. But Maya, you have to understand, this isn't without risk. If we're going to do this, we need to be absolutely certain we can protect you from the fallout. What kind of protection? Dr. Reeves leaned forward, her expression serious. I've been in contact with the ACLU. They're interested in your case, particularly the institutional aspects. If we can document a pattern of harassment enabled by administrative negligence, we might be able to bring outside pressure to bear. Maya felt her heart racing. You're talking about going to war with the entire system. I'm talking about holding the system accountable to its own stated values. Dr. Reeves corrected. But yes, it would be a war, and wars have casualties. Maya stared at the digital recorder, its small form somehow containing enormous potential for both justice and destruction. What would you need me to do? Create opportunities for Brandon to reveal his true nature. Push him into situations where his mask slips, where his careful facade cracks and shows what's really underneath. That sounds dangerous. It is dangerous. That's why we need to be smart about it, strategic. You have advantages he doesn't know about. Your judo training, your ability to stay calm under pressure, your understanding of how predators think and act. Maya picked up the recorder, feeling its weight in her palm. If I do this, if I provoke him into showing who he really is, what happens to me afterward? That depends on how well we execute the plan, Dr. Reeves said honestly. If we do this right, you become a catalyst for change, not just at Westbrook, but potentially at schools across the country dealing with similar issues. If we do it wrong, I become another casualty. Yes. Maya set the recorder back on the desk, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences. She thought about her parents, about the risks she would be taking not just with her own future but with their sacrifices. She thought about Marcus, who had chosen the safer path of retreat. She thought about all the students who would come after her, who would inherit whatever system emerged from this conflict. There's something else you should know, Dr. Reeves said quietly. I won't be able to protect you openly. If this is going to work, I have to maintain plausible deniability. You'll be essentially on your own until we have what we need. How long? Days, maybe weeks. It depends on how quickly Brandon takes the bait. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. When she opened them, Dr. Reeves was watching her with an expression of deep concern and deeper respect. I need to think about it, Maya said. Of course. But Maya, whatever you decide, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. You've already shown more courage than most adults ever will. As Maya left Dr. Reeves's classroom, the recorder tucked safely in her backpack, she felt the familiar pre-competition calm settling over her. This was the moment before stepping onto the mat, when strategy gave way to instinct and training took over. She spent the evening reading Sun Tzu, studying passages about deception and misdirection, about appearing weak when you were strong and strong when you were weak. But mostly, she thought about her sensei's teachings about the true purpose of martial arts, not to dominate others, but to protect what mattered most. The next morning, Maya made her decision. The opportunity came sooner than expected. It was Friday afternoon, and Maya was in the library working on a research paper when Brandon and his friends arrived, their voices carrying across the usually quiet space. They settled at a table within earshot of Maya's, their conversation casual but pointed. I heard Maya got another B on her history paper, Tyler said, not bothering to lower his voice. Maybe the academic pressure is finally getting to her. It's hard when you're not prepared for this level of work, Connor added. Some people just aren't cut out for the Westbrook standard. Maya kept her eyes on her laptop screen, but her hand moved carefully to the small recorder in her pocket, pressing the record button. Dr. Reeves had taught her to document everything, and this felt like the beginning of something important. I almost feel sorry for her, Brandon said, his voice carrying false sympathy. She's trying so hard to prove she belongs here, but everyone can see she's struggling. It's actually kind of sad. Maybe she should consider transferring, Tyler suggested. There are probably schools that would be a better fit for her abilities. Maya felt her jaw clench, but she forced herself to remain calm. This was exactly what Dr. Reeves had warned her about. They were testing her, trying to provoke a reaction. She kept typing, pretending to be absorbed in her work. Although, Brandon continued, his voice growing more contemplative, I suppose there's value in having her here. Diversity and all that. Makes the school look good in the brochures. Token diversity, Connor said with a snort. Check the box. Take the pictures for the website. Claim you're committed to inclusion. Exactly. As long as they don't expect too much, it works out for everyone. Maya's fingers stilled on the keyboard. The casual cruelty in their voices, the reduction of her entire existence to a marketing strategy, hit her harder than any direct insult could have. But she also recognized the opportunity. They were revealing their true thoughts, their genuine beliefs about students like her. She stood slowly, gathering her materials with deliberate movements. As she walked past their table, Brandon looked up with his practiced smile. Maya, how's the research going? Fine, she replied evenly. Just finishing up. Great. You know, if you ever need help with anything, don't hesitate to ask. We're all here to support each other. The false concern in his voice was perfectly calibrated, designed to sound helpful to any casual observer while carrying undertones of condescension that only Maya could fully hear. She nodded politely and continued walking, the recorder still running in her pocket. As she reached the library's exit, she heard Tyler's voice behind her. Such a friendly girl, really trying to fit in. Their laughter followed her into the hallway. Maya spent the weekend transcribing the recording, her anger growing with each replay. But anger wasn't enough. She needed strategy. She studied their words, looking for patterns and weaknesses, planning her next move. Monday brought a new escalation. Maya arrived at her locker to find it covered with sticky notes, each one containing a helpful suggestion for her continued success at Westbrook. Consider tutoring. Study groups available. Academic support services in the guidance office. The implication was clear. She needed help, special assistance, accommodations that other students didn't require. Maya removed the notes methodically, aware of the students gathering to watch. Brandon appeared at her shoulder, his expression concerned. Maya, are you okay? This looks like harassment. The audacity of his false sympathy made Maya's vision blur momentarily. But she recognized the performance, the way he was positioning himself as the concerned bystander rather than the orchestrator. I'm fine, she said calmly. Just some misguided attempts at helpfulness. Well, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here. We all are. Westbrook is a community, and we take care of our own. That phrase, our own, hung in the air between them. Maya met Brandon's eyes, seeing the challenge there, the implicit question of whether she truly qualified for inclusion in that community. Thank you, she said. I appreciate the support. As Brandon walked away, Maya noticed something she hadn't seen before. Tyler was recording the interaction on his phone, capturing Brandon's performance of concern and Maya's response. They were building their own narrative, creating evidence of their attempts to help and her apparent inability to appreciate their efforts. Maya realized with growing clarity that she was fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously. Not only did she have to deal with their harassment, but she also had to navigate their documentation of her responses, their creation of a parallel story that cast them as well-meaning and her as ungrateful. The recorder in her pocket suddenly felt like a lifeline. That afternoon, Maya sought out Dr. Reeves during her free period. The older woman listened to the weekend's recording with a grim expression, taking notes as Maya narrated the context and her observations. They're getting bolder, Dr. Reeves observed, and more sophisticated. This recording about token diversity is damaging, but they'll claim it was private conversation taken out of context. So it's not enough? It's a start. But we need something more direct, more obviously connected to their treatment of you specifically. Maya pulled out her phone and showed Dr. Reeves the video Tyler had recorded that morning. They're building a counter-narrative, making themselves look supportive while making me look paranoid or ungrateful. Dr. Reeves studied the video with the same intensity she brought to analyzing literature. This is actually useful. It shows premeditation, planning. They're not just bullying you. They're building a defense for their bullying. How is that useful? Because it reveals the systematic nature of what they're doing. This isn't random teenage cruelty. It's calculated harassment with institutional protection built in. That's exactly what we need to demonstrate. Maya felt a surge of hope, quickly tempered by Dr. Reeves's next words. But it also means they're preparing for a war. They know this might go public and they're ready for it. We need to be just as prepared. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya implemented a careful strategy of documentation and provocation. She attended study groups where Brandon and his friends would make their pointed comments, always with the recorder running. She positioned herself in public spaces where their private conversations would be overheard. She responded to their false concern with polite gratitude, forcing them to maintain their performance while growing increasingly frustrated with her refusal to break. The pressure was enormous. Maya found herself living in a constant state of hypervigilance, analyzing every interaction for hidden meanings and opportunities. Her grades suffered as her attention was divided between academics and warfare. Her parents noticed her exhaustion, but attributed it to the normal stress of a challenging school environment. But slowly, methodically, she was building a case. The breakthrough came during a school assembly about college applications. Maya was sitting alone as usual when Brandon slid into the seat beside her. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, not waiting for an answer. "I wanted to talk to you about something." Maya's hand moved to the recorder in her pocket. "Sure. I've been thinking about our conversation after the academic showcase," Brandon said, his voice low enough to avoid being overheard by nearby students. "About belonging and merit and all that." "Okay. I think maybe I came across as harsh. That wasn't my intention." Maya waited, sensing that this was leading somewhere important. "The thing is," Brandon continued, "I actually admire what you're trying to do here. Coming into an environment like Westbrook, trying to compete at our level, it takes guts." The condescension in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. Maya kept her expression neutral. "Thank you, but I worry that you're setting yourself up for disappointment. The standards here, the expectations, they're different from what you're probably used to, and there's no shame in recognizing that." Maya felt her pulse quicken. This was it, the moment Dr. Reeves had predicted, when Brandon's arrogance would lead him to reveal his true thoughts. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly. Brandon leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I mean that sometimes the kindest thing is honesty. You're a smart girl, Maya, but smart isn't always enough. This place, this world, it's not really designed for people like you. You can fight against that reality, or you can accept it and find somewhere you'll actually thrive." "People like me," Maya repeated. "You know what I mean. People from your background, with your circumstances. There are excellent schools that would appreciate what you bring to the table. Schools where you wouldn't have to constantly prove yourself." Maya felt the words like acid in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. "You think I should leave? I think you should consider what's best for your future. Struggling here, constantly feeling like you don't measure up. Is that really what you want for yourself?" The assembly was beginning, but Maya barely heard the speaker's words. All her attention was focused on Brandon's face, on the careful calculation behind his expression of false concern. "What if I don't want to leave?" she asked. Brandon's smile grew sharper. "Then I suppose you'll keep struggling, and we'll keep watching you struggle. And eventually everyone will see what I already know, that some people just aren't cut out for certain environments. And you'll make sure of that?" The question hung between them, loaded with implication. Brandon's eyes narrowed slightly, recognizing the trap too late. "I don't have to make sure of anything," he said carefully. "Reality has a way of asserting itself." Maya nodded slowly, her hand still on the recorder in her pocket. "I see. I hope you do. I really hope you do." As the assembly continued around them, Maya sat in silence, processing what had just occurred. Brandon had revealed himself completely, not through dramatic confession or obvious cruelty, but through the casual certainty of someone who had never questioned his right to determine who belonged and who didn't. This is about to get intense. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because stories like this one show us what real strength looks like. What's your prediction for how this ends? Drop it in the comments below. That evening, Maya met with Dr. Reeves to review the recording. As they listened to Brandon's words, Maya watched the older woman's expression grow increasingly grave. "This is it," Dr. Reeves said when the recording ended. "This is what we needed. Is it enough? Combined with everything else you've documented, yes. He's admitted to a systematic campaign to make you feel unwelcome, to undermine your confidence, to drive you away. and he's done it in language that reveals the racial and class-based assumptions underlying his behavior. Maya felt a mixture of relief and terror. So, what happens now? Now we go to war, Dr. Reeves said simply. Are you ready? Maya thought about the weeks of harassment, the isolation, the constant pressure to prove herself worthy of opportunities that should have been hers by right. She thought about Marcus, who had chosen to retreat. She thought about all the students who would come after her, who would face the same choice she was facing now. I'm ready, she said. But even as she spoke the words, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. Brandon and his friends had shown her what they were capable of when they felt secure in their power. What would they do when that power was threatened? She was about to find out. Dr. Reeves spent the next several days making calls, coordinating with contacts at the ACLU, and preparing the documentation that would transform Maya's individual struggle into a broader case about institutional responsibility. Meanwhile, Maya continued her careful performance of normalcy, attending classes and enduring the ongoing harassment while building an even stronger case. But Brandon seemed to sense that something had shifted. His interactions with Maya became more pointed, more aggressive. It was as if he could feel the walls closing in, even if he couldn't identify the specific threat. The confrontation Maya had been both dreading and anticipating finally came on a Thursday afternoon. She was leaving her physics class when Brandon intercepted her in an empty hallway, flanked by Tyler and Connor. Their usual careful positioning was absent. This felt different, more urgent. We need to talk, Brandon said, his voice stripped of its usual false pleasantry. Maya glanced around, noting the isolation, the absence of witnesses. About what? About the questions you've been asking, Tyler said, stepping closer. About the conversations you've been recording. Maya's blood went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb, Connor added. We know you've been documenting things, building some kind of case. The question is what you plan to do with it. Maya forced herself to remain calm, even as her mind raced. How had they found out? Had someone seen her with the recorder? Had Dr. Reeves's inquiries somehow gotten back to them? I think you're being paranoid, she said evenly. Brandon laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Paranoid? Maya, we know exactly what you're doing. The question is whether you understand what you're getting yourself into. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you, Brandon said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You think you're fighting some noble battle for justice, but you have no idea who you're actually fighting. My family has been part of this community for 4 generations. Tyler's father owns half the commercial real estate in the county. Connor's dad is a federal judge. So we have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, connections, influence. If you try to come at us with some half-baked harassment claim, we will destroy you and everyone who helped you. Maya felt her heart pounding, but she also felt something else. A cold clarity that came from finally seeing her opponents without their masks. You're admitting that you've been harassing me, she said quietly. I'm admitting that you're a diversity admission who's been struggling to keep up academically and socially, Brandon replied smoothly. If you want to call normal social dynamics harassment, that's your choice, but good luck proving it. Tyler stepped even closer, his voice barely audible. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop whatever little investigation you think you're conducting. You're going to stop recording conversations and asking questions. And you're going to finish out the semester quietly, without causing any more disruption. And if I don't, then we make your life so miserable that you'll transfer out by Christmas, Connor said. Just like Marcus did. Just like every other diversity case who couldn't handle the reality of what it means to be at Westbrook. Maya looked at each of them in turn, seeing clearly for the first time the entitled certainty that had shaped their entire worldview. They weren't just bullies. They were defenders of a system that had never required them to question their own worth or justify their place in the world. What if I've already documented this conversation? She asked. Brandon's eyes flickered with something that might have been uncertainty, but his voice remained steady. Then you've documented a private conversation between students discussing academic and social concerns. Nothing threatening, nothing inappropriate. Just honest dialogue about school dynamics. Maya realized with growing horror that they had planned this carefully, choosing their words to be defensible while still delivering their message with crystal clarity. Even if she was recording, even if she had evidence, they were confident in their ability to control the narrative. Think carefully, Maya, Brandon said, his voice returning to its familiar tone of false concern. Is this really the fight you want to pick? Is it really worth risking everything your parents have sacrificed to get you here? The mention of her parents hit like a physical blow. Maya felt something crack inside her chest, the careful control she had maintained for weeks finally beginning to fracture. "Stay away from me," she said, her voice shaking with suppressed emotion. "We will," Tyler said with a satisfied smile, "as long as you stay away from us, and from whatever little project you've been working on." As they walked away, Maya stood alone in the empty hallway, her body trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. The recorder in her pocket felt simultaneously like a weapon and a liability, evidence that could expose them, but also a target that made her vulnerable to retaliation. She thought about Dr. Reeves's warnings about the consequences of fighting back, about the price of challenging systems that were designed to protect their own. She thought about her parents, about the sacrifices they had made, and the risks she was taking with their investment in her future. But most of all, she thought about the certainty in Brandon's voice when he mentioned Marcus, when he casually referred to every other diversity case who had been driven away. This wasn't just about her. It was about a pattern, a system, a machine designed to crush anyone who threatened the comfortable hierarchies that kept people like Brandon in power. Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled to Dr. Reeves's number. Her thumb hovered over the call button for a long moment before she pressed it. "Maya, are you all right?" "They know," Maya said quietly. "They know about the recordings, about the documentation. They just threatened me." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Dr. Reeves spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. "Where are you now?" "School, empty hallway near the physics lab. Go home. Don't talk to anyone else today. I'll call you tonight." "Dr. Reeves." "Maya, listen to me very carefully. This is the moment I warned you about. They're going to escalate now, try to force you into a mistake. You need to be smarter and more careful than you've ever been in your life." As Maya walked to the parking lot to wait for her mother's pickup, she felt the weight of the decision she had made pressing down on her shoulders. There was no going back now. Brandon and his friends had revealed their true nature, and the war she had been preparing for was finally beginning in earnest. But she was no longer the uncertain girl who had walked through Westbrook's gates months earlier. She had learned their tactics, documented their methods, and built alliances they didn't know existed. Most importantly, she had discovered something about herself that even her judo training hadn't fully revealed. She was willing to fight for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible. The final confrontation was coming, and Maya intended to be ready for it. The final confrontation came during the winter formal, Westbrook's most prestigious social event. Maya had planned to skip it, but Dr. Reeves convinced her that public venues offered both opportunity and protection. "They feel most confident when they're performing for their peers," she explained. "That's when they'll make their biggest mistake." Maya arrived wearing a simple but elegant dress her mother had helped her choose, the digital recorder hidden in her purse alongside a backup device Dr. Reeves had provided. The gymnasium had been transformed into a winter wonderland, complete with ice sculptures and twinkling lights that cast everything in a magical glow. For the first hour, nothing happened. Maya danced with a few brave classmates and even managed to enjoy herself briefly. But she could feel Brandon's eyes on her from across the room, could sense the tension building like pressure before a storm. The explosion came when Maya was crowned Winter Formal Princess, a genuine surprise that left her speechless on stage. The applause was warm and authentic, a moment of acceptance she had barely dared to hope for. But as she descended from the stage, Brandon was waiting. "Congratulations," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the suddenly quiet space around them. "Though I have to wonder, did you win on merit, or was this another diversity initiative?" The music had stopped. Students gathered in a circle, sensing drama. Maya felt the familiar pre-competition calm settle over her, and she knew this was the moment everything had been building toward. "I won because my classmates voted for me," Maya said simply. "Right," Brandon laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Just like you earned your scholarship. Just like you deserve to be here. Tell me, Maya, don't you ever get tired of being everyone's diversity project?" Tyler and Connor materialized beside him, their positioning deliberate and threatening. Maya noticed other students backing away, creating a wider circle, some pulling out phones to record. "I earned everything I have," Maya said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Did you?" Brandon stepped closer, his voice rising. "Or did you just check the right boxes on the right forms?" Poor black girl from Oakland. Perfect for the admissions brochure, right? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even for Brandon, this was beyond his usual careful cruelty. Maya realized he was desperate, pushed beyond his limits by weeks of feeling his control slip away. "Let me tell you what you really are," Brandon continued, his voice growing louder and more vicious. "You're a charity case, a diversity hire, a token to make rich white people feel better about their privilege, and everyone here knows it." Maya felt something shift inside her. Not anger, but clarity. This was exactly what Dr. Reeves had predicted. Brandon, unmasked and vulnerable, revealing himself completely in front of hundreds of witnesses. "You done?" Maya asked quietly. Brandon sneered. "What are you going to do about it? Run to the administration? They don't care about students like you. They care about donations and alumni connections. Students like Tyler's family, like Connor's family, like mine. Students like yours," Maya repeated, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the silent gymnasium. "You mean students whose families buy their way in? Students who never have to earn anything because it's given to them? Students who are so insecure about their own worth that they have to tear down anyone who threatens to show what real achievement looks like?" Brandon's face flushed red. "You don't belong here. You never did. And after tonight, everyone will see exactly what you really are." He lunged forward, not with any real intention to hit her. Maya could read his body language easily, but to intimidate, to make her flinch, to humiliate her one final time in front of the entire school. Maya didn't flinch. Instead, she moved with the fluid precision of years of training. As Brandon's momentum carried him forward, Maya stepped aside and used a simple judo throw, tai otoshi, redirecting his energy and sending him tumbling to the floor in a tangle of expensive tuxedo and wounded pride. The gymnasium erupted in shocked silence, then nervous laughter, then genuine applause. Brandon lay on the floor, his perfect hair mussed, his dignity shattered, staring up at Maya with a mixture of shock and rage. "That," Maya said calmly, "is what real strength looks like." But the moment wasn't over. Tyler and Connor moved toward her, their faces twisted with anger at seeing their leader humiliated. Maya shifted into a defensive stance, reading their intentions with the clarity that came from years of studying opponents. "I wouldn't," she said quietly, but her voice carried clearly in the silence. "Unless you want to join him on the floor." They hesitated, suddenly uncertain. This wasn't the scared, isolated girl they'd been tormenting for months. This was someone who belonged exactly where she was, who had earned her place through skill and determination they could never understand. "You're all witnesses," Maya said, addressing the crowd of students surrounding them. "You've seen what really happened here, not just tonight, but for months. You've watched these boys try to drive me away because they were afraid that someone who actually earned their place might make them look bad." She looked down at Brandon, still sprawled on the floor. "You were right about one thing. I am different from you. I know what it means to work for something, to earn respect instead of inheriting it. And that's exactly why I belong here." Dr. Reeves appeared at the edge of the crowd, her face a mixture of pride and concern. Maya caught her eye and nodded slightly. Everything had been recorded, documented, witnessed by hundreds of their peers. As Brandon finally struggled to his feet, his face twisted with humiliation and rage, Maya felt a deep sense of completion. Not because the fight was over. She knew there would be consequences, investigations, legal challenges ahead, but because she had finally shown everyone, including herself, who she really was. The aftermath moved quickly. Videos of the confrontation spread across social media within hours, making Brandon's racist comments and subsequent humiliation go viral. The school board was forced to act, not because they wanted to, but because the public attention made inaction impossible. Dr. Reeves's carefully assembled case, combined with Maya's months of documentation and the undeniable evidence of the formal incident, created a perfect storm of accountability. Brandon was expelled, Tyler and Connor suspended, and the administration faced a federal investigation into their handling of discriminatory harassment. Maya's parents filed a civil rights lawsuit with ACLU support, not for money, but for institutional change. Westbrook was forced to implement new policies, hire diverse faculty, and create genuine support systems for students from underrepresented backgrounds. The legal consequences were swift and decisive. Brandon's family's attempts to minimize his behavior backfired when Maya's recordings revealed the systematic nature of his harassment. Connor's father, the federal judge, faced ethical questions about his attempts to influence the school's investigation. Tyler's family quietly settled out of court and established a scholarship fund for students from underrepresented communities. But the real victory was broader. Maya's story sparked conversations at schools across the country about institutional racism, privilege, and the courage required to stand up to systematic injustice. Other students came forward with their own stories, creating a movement that extended far beyond Westbrook's walls. 6 months later, Maya stood at the podium during graduation as class salutatorian, looking out at an audience that included not just her proud parents but representatives from universities and civil rights organizations who had followed her story. Dr. Reeves sat in the faculty section, beaming with the satisfaction of a teacher who had helped a student find their true strength. "Change is never easy," Maya said in her speech, "especially for those who benefit from the way things are. But it's necessary, and it's possible when people are willing to stand up, speak out, and fight for what's right." In the audience, new scholarship students, more diverse than ever before, listened with rapt attention. Maya had kept her promise. She had made it easier for those who would come after her. As she accepted her diploma and scholarship to Stanford, Maya thought about the scared girl who had walked through Westbrook's gates a year earlier. She had survived the test not by becoming someone different, but by discovering who she had always been, someone who belonged exactly where she was. Someone strong enough to fight for justice, someone brave enough to change the world. The bullies had targeted her thinking she was weak. They discovered too late that she was ruthless in her pursuit of justice, and that true strength comes not from tearing others down, but from lifting everyone up. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.